Hi, this is Trevor Conquergood. Welcome to this week's R&K Software Club's video for the week. And the topic for this week is about the ability to split a satin stitch. And you might notice that sometimes, for example, if you go looking in your free monthly designs for the latest batch, which is October 2022, and then you look at your designs, I'll go ahead and open up the one that says My First Halloween. And if you're looking at the design and you notice just up at the top of the letter H here, it seems kind of messy at that one spot. And so you zoom in and look and you're like, what the heck's going on up here? That is called a split satin. And when we assign a split satin in the properties box, we get to decide the length at which the satin will get split. So when you look at this sort of letter here, and I get even closer, if I measure sort of like the last stitch before it seems to be split, you can see that, well, and it's in inches, 0.27. I'm going to switch to metric because it's probably one of those things that's a little easier to measure in metric. And if I measure across there, oh, it says 7.1. I bet 7 is the setting that determines when this is going to split. And in the widest part, it's really only just over 7. And so if you didn't want that to be there, we could take control of it. Basically, you would need to do this kind of for any satin segment. You can do it for like all of them at one time or just on any one single piece. So it's basically whatever you select. So if I just select that one piece, see, it's all grouped together because we brought it in from the Designs tab. So I can easily ungroup it if I want to, right here, ungroup. And then, you could do one piece of your design, or like I said, if you want, you could, for example, select the entire color, or the entire design. But the setting will only appear in your works on your properties for the satin path. So this doesn't affect your pattern fills, but any of the shapes that say satin path will be affected by a satin split. Now, in your properties box up at the top, it's not at the first tab, which is for fit run, this is like your fill tab sort of thing. Not in the run tab, not in the underlay tab, but it's over here, and it's this one that kind of has black lines with little kind of little dots on it, I guess, and that says split. So if I click on that tab, you can see the settings. And the setting for these sort of design here is set as a random split. And it has a minimum and a maximum. So it says don't make any stitches smaller than 1.2, and it says don't make any stitches longer than 7. Well, for example, if I just change that to 8 and click apply, it's going to get rid of the splitting at the top of that letter H. And so now it looks a little cleaner. I'm just going to hit undo for a moment. The reason that we put those on is because as you make things bigger, and if you were to make this design even larger, well, then those stitches become larger. And as you make them larger, they get longer. And so now you're starting to see more of the splitting happening in more places. And the kind of cool thing about the split satin is it still allows the stitches to stay a satin where they can be and only splits them when they're too long. You always have the ability to turn it off. You can select that color or all of the parts and click on your split tab and simply change it from a random split to no split. You have options of a middle split, the absolute split, percentage split, or random split. And essentially each one will be a different way to split your satin stitches. If I choose none, well then they won't get split at all. However, there is a maximum. And I think that's part of what this is about is if you hit the maximum, you'll start to see gaps in your designs because some of the home embroidery machines simply will only sew so far from one needle penetration to the next without separating it with like jumps And some of the machines will read that as a time to trim. And so if I measure now up at the top of here, we're getting, into that 9.9 millimeter range. Well, and let me just, to demonstrate this, rather than make this bigger and bigger and bigger, what if it was wider? And if this piece was wider, there's the gap that I'm talking about. So if you're ever expanding your text bigger and bigger and bigger and you start to see a missing area, just know that the stitches aren't actually missing. If I turn off 3D, I can see they're still there, but you can see that they turn into like a dotted line. And that tells me that in between this stitch and that stitch, there is a jump. So now it's saying stitch, jump, stitch, jump, stitch, jump. And like I said, some of the home embroidery machines read that as a trim and they leave out these stitches. And that's why we show the stitches as missing when you display them, so that hey, this could cause you problems. If you don't breach that sort of maximum threshold, which I believe is 12 millimeters, if you were to measure when does this start leaving stitches out, right at that distance right there. What's that? Well, if I measure from here to there, it's 12. As soon as we hit that 12 millimeter range, it's going to give you this jump in between the needle points. Well, okay, that said, even if I do make it smaller and it's not splitting and it's not leaving anything out, I am creating a satin stitch that across the middle is almost 12. That's almost half an inch. That's pretty long. And it's not that you can't sew it, but if you're putting it on the back of a kid's jacket, it may not be as stable as you would like it to be. And, what if they rub up against a tree or something? Those stitches could get broken. Anyhow, sometimes it looks a little weird and it might catch you off. And so I wanted to make sure that you understood that, first of all, we have the ability to assign a split satin. And if you turn it on and do, for example, a middle split, then all of the shapes will have a line straight down their middle. Again, based upon a distance. So if you're like, well, that's cool, but I wish it just split the whole thing, well, then you need to make the distance smaller. So now you can click on that shape once again, click on the tab, and then instead of splitting it at 7, try splitting it at 4. And so anything longer than 4 millimeters will split. And so now it's coming almost all the way to the bottom, but not quite, because who wants to try and sew in this area, the column is only 2.5 millimeters across, and to split it would be like at 1 millimeter. And so you can do it if you want to. It's just all in your control. And that is one of the reasons why the software is called Floriani Total Control. Because if you really want to take the control of the stitches, you can. So I hope that was interesting, because I know sometimes we're just simply opening up, our favorite free monthly stock design, and then we, go ahead and make it larger, and we start to get these funny little splits in some of, like, for example, the letter, maybe the first will start to split now because I didn't address the red at all. And so this is what I'm saying. Now you can see what it looks like with a random split on the thick side and no split on the thin side. And, once again, it's all about the properties box and the place where it says split, and how you can control the split between random split, absolute split. So absolute split says you get to type in, at the distance that it's going to split. So if you wanted to, say a certain distance from the edge, then split. Percentage, well, same thing, except for it's a percentage instead of an absolute number. And random split simply makes the split not be all in the same place. So here it's a middle split and you get a very defined line. Here it's a random split, and as it splits the shape, it tries to vary where the needle points go. Another way to see this is to turn off your 3D and then turn on the needle points. And now you can see the kind of pattern of the needle points and how it splits them and where. Okie dokie. I hope you enjoyed this week's R&K Software Club's video for the week. I'm Trevor Conquergood. Have a wonderful day, and thanks for listening.